Space Invaders for Android Part 2. So in Part 1, we set everything up on Frame 1. We attached a whole bunch of stuff. So now we go to Frame 2. Frame 2 is the frame that repeats over and over again. Here we are on Frame 2, and we've got to stop at the very top, which means that we're not going to move on to Frame 3. We're just going to repeat Frame 2 at our default rate of 24 frames per second. So what happens here? This is where the game is played. The first thing up at the top you'll see is we have some sort of touch going on, and the touch is for us shooting. It goes onto the shooting button. So let's see what the shooting button is, where it is. It's this big one here. And if I take a look at the actual shooting button, yeah, it's my button that I'm using. I'm scaling it a lot when I move it on, but basically I want to avoid the places where I touch the arrows left and right. I better play this since this video you might not remember how the game looks. So here we are, and so let me just hide behind one of these guys so I don't get game over. Let me just move way over here. Right, so the active button for shooting is down here and in the middle and above here, but it's not where these arrows are. So that's why the shape looks like this, only it would be much bigger. That's where the arrows would be. And it's almost invisible, not totally. I've left it at 7%. I can make it completely invisible, and actually I'll make it totally visible. There's the shape, right? I've increased its size. So that's where you tap when you want to shoot. And what happens when you do tap on the shooting button is the Boolean variable bullet can move becomes true. At the beginning of the game it's false, but as soon as you tap it, it's true. So the bullet can move, and you'll see how that influences the movement of the bullet very, very soon. But then we get into a function which happens not on a touch event, not on a smartphone type of event. Well, it is a smartphone event, but it's not purely smartphone type event. It's an on enter frame event. So every time we enter a new frame, which is frame 2, since we have the stop there, 24 times per second, every time we enter a new frame 24 times per second, we are going to do this function. And this function in turn basically calls a bunch of other functions. So we'll take them one at a time. So move invaders. First of all, you'll see that there's this OK to move invaders is assigned pausing function. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But for now, let's look at this. If OK to move invaders, if that's true, and that OK to move invaders we'll see someplace else as well. But assuming that that's true, what we need to do is loop around all, however many there are, 4 times 11, 44, let's say. So this is a loop within a loop. So we just follow the mouse pointer. This is basically what happens. For row 0, we get in here. For column 0, we do this. Then column 1, column 2, this is all for row 0. Column 3, column 4, we go through all the columns of row 0. And when we're finished all the columns of row 0, we're finished the inner loop, so we go to the next line, which is to continue the outer loop, which goes to row 1. So now for row 1, which would be, for example, this row, we do all the columns again and again and again and again and again, and then again we increment the loop control variable row up by 1, so we row 2, so we'd be dealing with this row. And so what are we doing to move them? We say, if moving right, in other words, if the Boolean variable called moving right is true, then each one, as row and call go through each of the rows and each of the calls, for each one of them, the x goes plus equals invader speed. So whatever invader speed is, for example 5, then that means that each invader is going to go to the right by 5. If moving right is not true, there's only one other value that a Boolean can be, and that's false. So in other words, if the moving right variable is not true, then it's false, which means we're doing this. So as the invaders move across, we'll just watch it here. The invaders are all moving across left right now, so moving right must be false. And pretty soon, their moving right variable is going to be true. Now it's true. So now they're all shifting to the right. That's it. It's the x. It's the x of each one of them goes up by the invader speed. What's the invader speed? There it is. Invader speed is 4. And you'll see later on that that number is going to be added to, so the speed will get faster and faster. But anyway, if we run this now, we should see that our invaders move to the right. And they do. The problem at this point, of course, is that they keep on moving to the right. So when they get over here, they'll keep on going. And I'm not sure if this is going to show in the video, but there is a very faint line you can see there, which is what we're going to use to prevent them from going any further than there. So we'll take a look. It's not a bad idea, actually, for me to increase the opacity of this so you can see it more clearly. And the one over here as well. Right, we're going to take advantage of these two things to basically block them. So when the invaders hit here, that's the key to start moving the other way. This one's called right boundary, and that one's called left boundary. So the next function, which happens every second that we're going to look at then, is boundary, the things that I just talked about, hit test. So I'll go find it. And as I found it, I've actually just realized there's one thing that I should have added in moving invaders. I said I was going to get back to this, okay to move invaders equals the pausing function. Let me explain that. It won't take very long, and then we'll get back to the boundary check. Yeah, so basically this variable is true or false based on a value which is returned by this pausing function. And here's the pausing function down here. I say the pausing function is what adds the staggered movement to the invaders. They go dun, 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 and then they speed up. Dun, 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 dun. They speed up even faster. Dun, 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 dun. I think if you played the game, you know how it goes. So the pausing function basically makes them move and stop, move and stop, move and stop. And the way this works is it returns a number, this n, if the number equals 0. And it becomes 0 or not by returning the frame number, integer division remainder 12. So in other words, if the frame number we're on right now is 12, 12 divided by 12, the remainder is 0, so that would return true. At frame 13, it's going to be 13 integer division remainder, or modulus division is the other way to put that, modulus division 12. The remainder of 13 divided by 12 is 1, and 1 is not equal to 0, so this would be returning false. So what this accomplishes, and by the way, we keep track of the frame rate. Remember where I am here, 267. The frame rate, we started up here at 0, and every frame it goes up by 1. So we are keeping track of the frame number. 267, where was I? So right, only 1 out of every 12 frames, or 1 every 12 frames, frame 12, frame 24, frame 36, and so on, will this be true. And so up here, we're only moving the invaders every 12th frame, or in other words, every half a second. As you'll see, if I play it one more time, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. All right. So all that stuff that I just talked about a moment ago only happens every half a second. So back we go then to this idea of the boundary hit check, where when they get to the right, they hit the boundary and then they switch directions. We've got to check each and every invader to see if it's hit the side. We just can't check, for example, that one, because sooner or later, these are all going to be blown away. Or maybe this is the only one that's going to be left. Or maybe all this column has been blown away. So that's the first one. So we want them all to go all the way over. I don't know how far this guy gets in this game. So like here, a bunch are blown away. We don't want them to stop. Now we want them to keep on moving. We want them to keep on moving until one of these guys hits over here. Should happen any minute, right up there, right? So we've got to check every single invader to see this. See if it has hit the right boundary. If any of them has hit the right boundary, then we want them not moving right. So we make that moving right to be false, and we move them down one. And if we haven't hit the right boundary, maybe we've been moving to the left and we're hitting the left boundary. So if any of the invaders hits the left boundary, then the moving right becomes true, because we don't want them to move left anymore, we do want them to move right. Because you recall when we looked at the moving invaders function, that it's the moving right that determines whether they go plus equals the speed or minus equals the speed. The other thing to mention is that we do want them to move down. So let's just take one last look at this, and then I'll end this part of the video series. And notice that when they get to the right, not only do they switch direction, moving right is going to become false. Right now, but they shift down. Ever so slightly, they move down. So rather than doing that code right here, it was starting to get a little bit much for one function, so I made a function called move all down, and it should be just above it, and here it is, move all down. So the last thing for this part, again, the loop within a loop to go through all of the invaders, and for every single one of them, in this case it's the y that has to increase, so the y goes down. And the other thing that I needed to do, because it wasn't working correctly, because I kept on moving, because they were hitting the right side and they kept on hitting it, so they kept on moving down, 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 down. As soon as they shift down once, that very instant I had to move them off of the border so they were no longer touching. In fact, I'm just going to show you this to show you what the problem was, and you'll understand why we did this solution. So right now, as soon as they hit the right-hand border, they're going to move down, but as they move down, they're still going to be touching the border. So if they're still touching the border, they still have to move down. So here we go. Watch closely. And I guess you really don't have to watch closely, they just keep on moving all the way down. Right. So to prevent that, one last time before I end this part, what you do is as soon as the very first test becomes true of an invader hitting the boundary, not only do we move them down, but we either move them to the right or we move them to the left, off of the boundary. That's it for part 2.